What's going on? Welcome to the episode. I hope you are having an awesome morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is. Today we are talking about male versus female fat loss. So we're going to delve into the differences between men and women when it comes to getting in shape and what you'll want to consider depending on your biological sex. So let's dig in. First up, let's establish what is the same between men and women. So what applies across the board? Both men and women require a calorie deficit for fat loss, meaning regardless of sex, you have to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose fat. So in other words, you need to be consuming fewer calories than you are expending in order to yield fat loss results. That's the same no matter who you are. There is no way around this one. It is thermodynamics at its finest. Moving on to food choices. They are actually going to be different, but not between men and women. Food choices are going to be different between individuals, meaning what foods you tolerate and digest well depend on you personally, not whether you are male or female. For example, I don't tolerate dairy all that well. I have been mixing in some Greek yogurt as of late, which has been really enjoyable, but I have to be careful with how much I consume or else my skin starts to flare up. And this is not determined by the fact that I am a male. It's based on my individual sensitivity to dairy-containing foods specifically. Now, if you don't digest gluten or beans or legumes or soy all that well, it's not due to whether you are male or female. It's based on your personal sensitivity to said foods. So food choice-wise, this isn't a difference between men and women, but rather between individual people as a whole. How about portions? Portions are not necessarily distinguished via male versus female either, but rather similar to the sensitivity and digestion piece we just covered. Portions are dependent on the individual. Some men are going to require more calories than some women, and some women are going to require more calories than some men. However, on average, men are going to need to consume more calories than women simply because men, on average, are larger animals. And so this isn't male versus female specific, but rather size dependent. For example, if we take a 200-pound active male and a 150-pound active female, assuming all other things are equal, the 200-pound male is going to require more calories. However, if we take a 200-pound active female and a 150-pound active male, the 200-pound female is going to require more calories. So this is size specific, not male versus female dependent. So we've established that both men and women require a calorie deficit in order to lose fat. Food choices are individual specific, and the same goes for food portions because they're dependent on size, not sex. The primary difference between men and women in regards to fat loss isn't actually in terms of overall results or strategy necessarily, but rather how you go about assessing those results. And the reason that fat loss assessment is different between men and women is due to the fact that women menstruate and men don't. So men and women can lose fat at the exact same rate, which is great news for our female listeners, because I would say that in the lay public, the messaging around male versus female fat loss is that men have it better. And relatively speaking, they actually don't. Women can lose fat just as fast as men can. And I'm not only speaking from a purely physiological lens here, I'm speaking from personal experience, being that 2/3 of my clientele over the last decade have been female. So I'm not just pulling this stuff out of my ass. This is real world, practical, in the trenches style truth right here. Now, let's dig into the assessment variance between men and women that I'd recommend keeping a close eye on. The menstrual cycle does not impair or impact fat loss itself, like we've established, but what it does do is sort of clouds the water of fat loss assessment due to cycle-related water retention. which, to be clear, is not body fat, it's body water. However, it shows up on your bathroom scale all the same. This is one of the primary reasons why I not only track scale weight in all of my clients, but I also do weekly photo assessment, because the scale can't differentiate between body fat and body water, but my trained eye can. Even the fancy bioelectrical impedance scales cannot differ between body fat and body water accurately. A quick side note, fancy scales are a waste of money. Just get a regular ass bathroom scale. That's all you need. Now, women with regular cycles get them roughly once per month, and so every 4 weeks more or less. It's important to be aware that your scale weight as a woman may be impacted or fuzzied by your cycle. For example, you may have lost 2 pounds of body fat the week of your cycle. However, if you're retaining 2 pounds of fluid, it's going to look like you maintained your weight, which you technically did, but you still lost body fat. And so as long as you stay the course lifestyle-wise, that water is going to drop off in a matter of days, and your progress will be reflected via the scale as a result. This is where the psychology of fat loss factors in a lot more for women than it does men. So let's delve into this because it's super helpful to know. If as a woman you put in a whole bunch of effort into eating really well, hitting your 10,000 steps daily, and prioritizing sleep, and like the example that I just mentioned, at the end of the week, the scale isn't reflecting your hard work. A lot of women tend to get frustrated and give up, unfortunately, which is understandable in a sense if you don't know the ins and outs about your cycle and how it can impact your body. Don't give up. Keep going. You are still progressing. Your cycle is just blurring that progress temporarily. Another layer to this is that culturally, there are all sorts of beliefs around the menstrual cycle and how it impacts things like mood, energy levels, cravings, sleep, bloating, digestion, and the list goes on. But let's take bloating and digestion as an example. If you experience cravings around your cycle and you choose to indulge in those cravings, so let's say that you eat a bunch of milk chocolate and some ice cream. 2 really common foods to crave pre and on cycle, in North America at least. How do you know that you're bloated solely due to your cycle and not because you just ate a bunch of chocolate and ice cream? In this case, the only tried and true way to find out for sure what's leading to bloating around your cycle would be to stay right on point nutrition-wise and then assess whether your digestion and or bloating ramps up, because you cannot change variables, i.e. food intake, and then attribute the result like you didn't introduce new variables. In order to get accurate feedback, you've got to compare apples to apples. Because it's highly likely that eating a whole bunch of chocolate and ice cream is going to bloat you no matter what time of the month it is, right? Shit. I don't menstruate, and indulging in chocolate and ice cream would blow me up like a balloon. Dairy is a very common food intolerance, and chocolate and ice cream have a whole bunch of both. Also, the expectation that you're going to crave X foods around your cycle can often exacerbate those cravings or even create them when they aren't necessarily there. And there is fascinating research around what foods women crave around their cycles in different areas of the world. So for example, cravings are different in Canada and the US versus Europe. How fascinating is that? Now, the physiology of women in North America is identical to those in Europe. Same species, we're all human. But this is a prime example that cravings can, at least in some part, be a cultural phenomenon. You could think about it like comfort food, right? What is comfort food? Maybe soup just came to mind for you. For me, it's pizza. For other folks, it's a burger and fries. And someone else could crave a dish that's specific to their ancestry and what they grew up on as a kid. For example, Comfort food for my father is Indian food that his mother would make. There is no universal quote unquote comfort food. It's totally subjective. Another example of this, chocolate is like the token cycle related craving in North America. And chocolate doesn't exist in every area of the world. Some people simply don't have access to it. And so if you've never eaten chocolate, how could you crave it, right? It's not possible. You might not even know what chocolate is because there are folks out there that have never seen or eaten it before. Now, I've heard all sorts of interesting reasons why women in the Americas crave chocolate around their cycle, and one of the most creative ones was that they're needing magnesium, and chocolate does have magnesium in it. However, there are other foods that are way higher in magnesium than chocolate. For example, pumpkin seeds have like 2.5 times more magnesium per ounce than chocolate does, but no one is craving pumpkin seeds because they just don't taste that good. Chocolate, on the other hand, fucking delicious. It's funny, the chocolate and PMS relationship sort of reminds me of the wine and health relationship because I'm sure you've heard of studies talking about how a glass of wine per day is healthy because of, the resveratrol and things like that. This is a prime example of how good we are at rationalizing behaviors that we simply want to partake in. Because alcohol is not adding to your health. That is insane. There are things that typically go along with alcohol that can contribute to your health, like social connection, time with loved ones, laughing and joking around, things like that. But alcohol, in and of itself, is not health promoting in any way, shape, or form. But if you zoom in far enough, you can cherry pick studies and nutrients and information to say just about anything that you want them to. Moral of the story here is that culture and expectation play a massive role in food behavior and cravings. Another note on cycle-related cravings that can impact fat loss is adherence. So for example, if you're expecting to crave a bunch of calorie-dense treat-like foods once per month and you choose to indulge in those cravings, that is going to drive up your overall calorie intake and therefore slow fat loss. Now, is it the cycle itself that's impairing or slowing fat loss? Fortunately not, because the menstrual cycle doesn't contain energy. It's a biological process. But this, along with some potential water retention, provides us with a correlation versus causation situation, and that's easy to mix up. We do it in so many areas of life. Now, as a side note on PMS-related issues, I've got some more great news. The healthier and healthier you get, the less and less you're going to experience undesirable PMS-like symptoms. So bloating, cramps, lethargy, etc. are only going to get better the more and more you tighten up your lifestyle. And I've seen this in so many of my female clients that it's just been undeniable. Literally hundreds of women that I've worked with. Now, this also helps in relation to fat loss itself from a cravings diminishing standpoint, which will increase adherence, lower calorie intake, and therefore yield better results. But also in how you assess your progress. Because if you experience less bloating and water retention, then you're not going to have as much monthly fluctuation on the scale due to your cycle, and voila, the differences between men and women in regards to fat loss assessment become even more negligible. It's so cool. Some women come to me experiencing really bad PMS, and we can get them to a point where they literally forget that their cycle is approaching until it's like, oh wow, there it is, And so many of my female clients have experienced PMS their whole lives that they didn't know anything different. So they're A, very pleasantly surprised, and B, really relieved because they thought that this was something that they were going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives. Game-changing stuff. So when comparing male versus female fat loss, fortunately, men and women can lose fat equally as quickly. It's just that women may need to factor in cycle-related weight fluctuations once per month. However, it's just water, not fat, nothing to worry about. Continue on course and everything evens out, big picture. Also, the healthier you get, the less and less you're going to even notice your cycle as a woman, which is amazing because a lot of women's lifestyles are really impacted via their cycle. And so personally, I found that many of my female clients find it really empowering when they experience firsthand just how much their symptoms improve as they dial in their nutrition, movement, and sleep habits. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. Follow me up on Instagram at N1Fitness, on TikTok at the N1Fitness, and feel free to friend me on Facebook at Marcus Sadu. Thank you so much to the folks that have taken 30 seconds out of their day to leave a review on their favorite podcast platform. I truly and genuinely appreciate it. Lastly, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this information useful, and I will catch you on the next episode. See ya.